Jaden Daniels looking for Devontae Adams.
He's wide open. He's got it for the touchdown.
Wow, my God. Jaden Daniels on Saturday in that flag football spectacular. 14 of 18 for 242 yards, 3 touchdowns. He also rushed for 77 yards and caught a couple of balls for 39 yards. Looked really good in his return to the field after missing the better part of 13 of his team's 17 games in 2025, which included, by the way, remember this, him being shut down for the team's final 4 games for preventative measures. It was really good to see him back out on the field Saturday. He had a couple of jukes in the open field when he was playing receiver, of course. I love to see his versatility used that way. I hope David Blau was paying attention, Max. Wow, what a performance. Good morning, everybody. The tournament was good over the weekend. I thought it was. I watched a lot of it. One seed is out. So much end-of-game strategy to talk about in the 2 close games yesterday, the Kansas St. John's and the Iowa-Florida games. We'll get to all of that on the show today, I promise. All of the tournament recap stuff we'll get to. Big NFL contract news this morning. We'll get to that here shortly. And Alex Ovechkin scored a goal, his 1,000th of his career, both regular season and postseason combined. The Caps, they're not out of it yet. They still have 11 games to play. They got a point in their loss yesterday in overtime, but they are sitting right now 6 points behind the team that would have the second wild card, but there are also 4 teams in front of them to get to that team. They're going to have to go on a tear here, but they've played better recently, having won 2 of their last 3, and yesterday's loss, of course, being an overtime loss to the best team in the NHL. If you didn't know that, the Colorado Avalanche have the most points, 102 points already, with still 13 games left. By the way, what's the point record for a season, Max, in the NHL? Do you know that offhand?
Off the top of my head, for a team in a season.
Are you gonna chat? Are you going to chat this?
Yeah, it got set in 22-23. The Bruins set it with 135. I knew it was recent.
135.
I didn't know how recent. But yeah,
okay. Because I'm looking at Colorado, I'm like, God, they got 102 points. They're 46-13 with 10 overtime losses. That's got to be pretty good, but it's nowhere near the Bruins. All right, God, man, 5 was spectacular in this flag football game. I didn't watch any of it. And those stats that I gave you were totally made up. I don't know what his stats were. I just saw the video of him running routes as a receiver, juking people, and what turned out to be, of course, when you get professional athletes, and by the way, they're playing the U.S. national flag team, which apparently wiped up the NFL players. So my buddy Tom Lavero's theory that the Kansas City Chiefs or any Super Bowl champion could go to soccer camp for 3 weeks and win the World Cup is probably not true. Not that I thought it was true when he first said it about 10 years ago. The flag football USA team that will compete in the Olympics apparently wiped up the NFL players. It's a different game, but it was just so great to see Jaden out there running routes, juking people. Honestly, when I saw these highlights pop up on my social media timeline, of course, the chances of anything happening in a game like this to any of the many players, and there were a lot of professional players with big contracts, with big futures in the game, I get it. And yes, somebody pointed out, a friend of mine pointed out, don't you remember, Sheehan, when the Redskins during the offseason would play in, basketball games, charity basketball games? Of course I remember going to Walt Whitman High School when I was like 12, and I was actually on the scorebook. I had a neighbor who was at Whitman. He was older, and he gave me, some responsibility in the Redskins versus, I don't even remember who they played, in some charity basketball game at Walt Whitman, and I got to keep the scorebook as a 12-year-old. That's a lot of confidence that somebody placed in your boy at 12. But yeah, but let's also keep in mind those guys made like, $30 a game, back then. They had full-time jobs. They were doing everything they could to generate as much as they could. And by the way, I don't have any problem with the commercials and trying to make as much money as they can. I'm just telling you, this was a chance that I don't know that Josh Harris and Adam Peters and Dan Quinn were laughing that hard when they saw Jaden running wide receiver routes in his first action since, early December. Bless their hearts, because I'm sure the Saudis paid him big money for this, and who am I to say don't take that kind of money? I get it. And you know what? And I said this last week, and I said it 3 weeks ago or a month ago when this first came out. If it's March of 2024 and Jaden's just had the best rookie season in the history of the sport, not even thinking about it. It's just the optics of the dude barely playing football. And every time he stepped on the field, it seemed like he got injured during the season. To go out and play in a very low-risk environment, I'm not suggesting that there was great risk. I know what the chances were, slim and none, that he got injured. But here were the chances if he didn't play in the game, running wide receiver routes, juking people in the open field. 0%. Can you imagine if something had happened in that game? If he had a wrong plant foot go, in the wrong direction, and we're talking Achilles or we're talking ACL, our organization and him and his mother and everybody associated with it would be skewered for the rest of their professional lives and a big part of their personal lives. I'm glad nothing happened. And I didn't think anything would happen. My point all along was coming off an absolute dreadful 5-12 miserable season where Jaden barely played any football. And that was the reason, the number one reason the season was so miserable. Why should the first football he plays be something that is far from advancing his number one responsibility, which is to get better at playing tackle football in the NFL? Nothing he did Saturday advanced the cause of returning to the field and playing at a high level in David Blau's new offense. It's great promotional for the flag, universe, which I know. I mean, my kids were kind of at the turn of tackle football participation decreasing exponentially, flag football participation increasing exponentially. I lived it as a parent to see the tough decisions that parents were making about tackle football and their young boys and the concussion issue. And it's great that flag's doing so well. Love that it's an Olympic sport. Love it. But even with the tiniest risk in any sort of event like that, because there is at least a tiny risk, I'm pretty sure he shouldn't have been taking it. But then again, I don't know what the number was. I'd love to know what the number was. What did the Saudis pay these dudes to play in this? And why did Tom Brady or Jaden or his co-captain Joe Burrow, why did they feel compelled to have 5 after all these injuries out running pass routes? How about just shotgun and sling it? Boom. No running, just we're throwing the ball. And there were a couple of great videos of him throwing the ball. I can't wait. And I got this, 3 weeks ago when I talked about it. I got it last week when I talked about it. All of you saying, go back to your, go back to your antiquing weekends, Sheehan. All right, let the men play. All right. No, I get it. I understand it. And I have no issue and would have had no issue last year. But since he didn't play football hardly at all, because every time he stepped on the field, he got injured. And in some cases, barely without any contact. I mean, what are we talking about here? It should have been a big, big number to do that. I promise you that nobody was, doing cartwheels over this in the organization. They probably understood that it's the tiniest of risks, and who are we to tell him that he can't take whatever kind of money was paid to these guys to do this. But a lot of, please, God, the organization would be damaged permanently if he had gotten hurt seriously. If any of those players, if Joe Burrow had been, Joe Burrow's diving for the end zone head first. This dude's barely played football in 3 of his 6 seasons or whatever it is. Hope it worked out well. Go flag football. Yay. And Jaden, yay. Looked great. Can't wait to see it on, September, whatever that would be. I did mention last week just the remote possibility that Seattle has to open up their title defense on the road because of the soccer team has a game there scheduled the night they're going to play Wednesday night. I think it's September 9th. And then the Mariners have a game scheduled at the same time. Now, in Seattle, I think the relationships between those people, I don't know it for sure. I know that the Baltimore stuff was contentious when the Ravens won the Super Bowl in 2012 and couldn't open it up at home, their defense of their title on Thursday Night Football. They had to do it on the road at Denver because the Orioles wouldn't move their 7:05 start time, and the traffic would have been too much to handle. I'm sure Seattle will get it figured out, but if they open up on the road, it could be here. It's one of Seattle's 8 road games next year in Washington. I'm glad nothing happened. Thank God. Whew. All right, let's talk some hoops, man. Look, first of all, my only interest in this tournament are the teams that I've wagered on. And that has gone quite well, Max. Smell tested 14-8 through the first 2 rounds of the tournament. 6-4 yesterday, 2-1 on Saturday. Friday was a 2-2 day, and I think Thursday was a 2-1 day, and then I had Howard to kick the whole thing off. So hitting it, 63.3% or whatever that turns out to be through the first 2 weekends. And there were a couple of them that were a couple of losses yesterday. I mean, I had the under in the Miami Purdue game. The number was 147.5. And of course, Fletcher Lawyer made 2 free throws to put it at 148. But anyway, the games over the weekend, well, we left you on Friday. We should actually go back to Adafe Owe's brother, Otage Owe, with Kentucky hitting that 35-foot near half, just inside half court bank shot at the buzzer to force overtime in what was a thrilling game. That was the game of the day on Friday, the very first game of the day against Santa Clara. What a game that was. They ended up winning that game 89-84. You talk about a bad beat if you had Santa Clara plus the 3.5 in that game. Overtime's not the friend of the underdog better or the under better. And that one hurt. But yeah, Otage Owe is Adafe Owe's younger brother. In that game, he had 35. He's a very good player. And had that memorable shot of the tournament. We've had a couple of them now. We've had a couple of memorable finishes in this tournament. We had the TCU finish to kick off the Thursday first round action. That was a shot, inside a few seconds. On Friday, we had the the Owe bank shot to force overtime. That was a thrilling game for sure. And then Saturday, we had, a really good lineup of games in general. And I do want to kind of recap all of the weekend games with just some notes that I have on all these games. And why don't we break and then we'll come back and we'll talk about, the TCU Duke in the officiating, which was truly horrendous, and the Nebraska Vanderbilt game, which was off the hook. And then we had 2 unbelievably strategic finishes in the second round yesterday. So we'll get to all of the tournament stuff next. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the Team980.com.
Staff making sure they know no fouls.
This is going to be Darling. He's got to go. Darling puts it up.
St. John's is going to the Sweet 16. Sturts with the catch. Sturts bounce pass to the corner. Fulgaris for three. Yo! Oh! 9 to play. Florida's got no timeouts. Iowa takes the lead by 1. Condon will inbound it to Lee. Lee across midcourt. Lee speeding toward the basket. Lee leaves it underneath. That's it! Iowa, for the first time since 1999, will head to the Sweet 16.
That guy, Ben McCollum, can just flat out coach. He's done it at every level, did it with Drake last year. The Iowa coach is outstanding, really good. Everything about what he does, I love. Yeah, we had some good games yesterday. That Iowa-Florida game, the Kansas-St. John's game, literally for about 3/4 of the game, was a game in which it looked like, a CYO 6th grade game where you didn't have multiple people on the floor, more than 2 or 3 that could actually dribble, pass, and shoot the ball. It was so hideous to watch. It was good defense at times, hideous offense. But let's go back to Saturday to start kind of the recap of the weekend. And then if you want to weigh in with a moment that was, for you worth discussing from the 2 days of second round games, have at it at 301-230-0980. So on Saturday, if we go through this chronologically, we have to start with Duke and TCU, a very hard-fought game through about 30 minutes of the game, but a game that was definitely impacted by officiating. Shocker, Duke game impacted by officiating. Always seems to be an issue in some of their games. And look, I'm the first to admit I lived it on the wrong side of it for many, many years. And at the same time, I know a lot of it is hyperbolic. A lot of it isn't what we actually think it is. But there are too many instances over the years where you look at it and you're like, well, that wasn't right. And which of the two teams on the floor did it benefit significantly? Oh, Duke. In a game in which really both teams were attacking the rim, Duke shot 23 free throws to TCU's 10 free throws. But there were two moments in particular. There was an obvious, an absolute egregious miss of a goaltending on Duke that would have given TCU 2 points in a very critical portion of the second half. And they missed it. They just flat out missed it. And then to make matters worse, with Jamie Dixon complaining that they missed it very obviously, they teed him up. I mean, even, highly respected college basketball guys, Matt Norlander, wow, refs miss a goaltend against Duke. Dixon lets them get an earful and then gets a tee. Equates to a 4-point flip when you account for the official not doing his job correctly. The kind of thing that prevents you from working a Final Four. Can't miss those calls in these games. Jeff Borzello, longtime college hoops writer, egregious missed goaltending call, and then compounding it by teeing up Jamie Dixon. Fun stuff. Look, Duke was ultimately a 23-point winner in this game, so it's really hard to say that there was a moment and a miss of a call that decided the game. I'll tell you what it did decide. It did decide the nature of the game after that. That game would not have been a 23-point blowout win without that 4-point swing and without the swing that happened when a TCU player went up to block a Cameron Boozer shot and literally got flipped in the air, and to protect himself from perhaps perishing on the way down head first, he grabbed Cameron Boozer by the shoulder to sort of keep and break his fall, which helped, and he landed on his back instead of his head. And then they called it a flagrant one on the TCU kid. He goes for a pump fake. He gets up in the air. He literally, as Cameron Boozer's ducking under him, flips in the air, is going to land on his head if he doesn't reach out and grab something. He grabs Cameron Boozer, and they called him for a flagrant one. That's like comedy. What are we doing here? By the way, Cameron Boozer cannot be a top 3 pick in the NBA draft. Love him as a competitor. Love that he's got a super high floor. He's going to be a good NBA player. But when you're drafting in the top 3, you're drafting for a top 5 transcendent hopeful down the road. That's not him. If you've watched him enough this year, you know that's not him. You know, he can't finish at the rim in college. How's he going to finish at the rim in the NBA? He's a good player, though. Don't get me wrong. And he's a fabulous, tenacious competitor. Love everything about watching him play. But that's not the conversation. The conversation is, should he be a top 3 pick? The answer is emphatically no. Now, unless you're just protective in your pick and you want to draft the highest floor possible. He might have the highest floor, but he's also got the lowest ceiling of the guys that have been discussed in terms of, top 3, top 4 picks. So Duke moves on. They're coming here Friday night to play St. John's. More on the St. John's game in a moment. The rest of the day, Saturday, saw some impressive performances. I thought Michigan State looked really good. Michigan State's got one of those teams. It's not their normal, super rugged team. Cone Carr may be the best dunker in college basketball in this era. He is a 6'6". I mean, when you talk about springy, I don't know what his vertical is. It's probably 44 plus, every bit of it. Then he's got some longer arms, and he's just been a dunking machine since he's come in to college. And now he's got a more well-rounded game as well. He went for 21 and 10. If you haven't seen, Cone Carr, Coen Carr, number 55 for Michigan State, I'm sure there's a dunk highlight reel somewhere out there that you can watch. He is, I think, the most spectacular dunker in the tournament, left in the tournament. By the way, as an aside, every once in a while, not every once in a while, just because of the algorithms, I would imagine, but I just get sent all of these Maryland things on Twitter. 22 years a day, 22 years ago today, we beat this team. 28 years ago, But every single time I get sent the Len Bias, minute 21 second dunk highlight reel, I don't need to be reminded. Trust me, I don't. Len Bias as a dunker at the college level was in the Sean Kemp. I've always said that Leonard would have been Dominique Wilkins, not Michael Jordan. That was the comp. The comp was always Michael Jordan. I'm like, no, that's not the right comp. The right comp is Dominique Wilkins. Len Bias was a forward. He was not a 2-guard. He didn't handle the ball very well. He was not a great ball handler. Jordan, of course, was. Bias was a much better college shooter than Jordan and a much better shot blocker, defender, etc. And just like Mike, he had the killer gene. But if you've never seen, I should just retweet it the next time I get sent it. He's got a dunk in a tournament game in '86 against Pepperdine in the first round where he takes the ball just inside the free throw line and he takes off from that spot. He's spread eagle. His head was above the rim as he literally tried to dunk the ball through the floor. That was the thing about Dominique, Kemp, Bias. They were in that era the dunkers that didn't care about it was about how hard can I dunk on you and will the ball make an indent in the wood when it goes through the hoop. God, Bias. Whew. You had to live it to understand it. I know it's one of those things for you younger listeners. Yeah, okay. I heard about it. That's 1986. No. Totally would have translated to today. His athleticism, just like I always have felt Dominique Wilkins's athleticism would have translated to today. Sean Kemp, same thing. And I think Karl Malone, from a physical standpoint, size standpoint, would have translated to today. Just a couple of examples. Anyway, Cone Carr, 55 for Michigan State, best dunker in the tournament. Illinois looked really good. They kind of, pulled away from VCU. Man, I mean, they've got the Balkans covered, man. They just have so many Eastern Europeans on their roster, and they're older and they're good. Big-time matchup, though, with Kelvin Sampson's Houston team in the Sweet 16. The Nebraska game may have been one of my favorites from this standpoint. That crowd was incredible. Nebraska's fan base for all sports is top-notch. Of course, they'd give that back in a heartbeat for a college football playoff berth next year. I understand where, the bread is buttered and where the importance is, but God, their fans are so great. They turn out for everything. And this game was such a home court advantage in Oklahoma City with Nebraska playing there. And I watched a game in which Nebraska ended up winning the basketball game, but to me, Vanderbilt's the better team, and it's a shame they were seeded 5th. It's a shame they were underseeded. People talked about that before. That's a good basketball team that's not going to chance, that won't be in the Sweet 16. I don't know. Maybe they would have been the 4 and Nebraska would have been the 5, and the result would have been the same. Who knows? But Nebraska had a clear home court advantage, and it really was meaningful. That was big shot after big shot down the stretch. Two well-coached teams. Really enjoyed that game on Saturday late. And then the last game of the night on Saturday, High Point in Arkansas. So sign me up for Darius Acuff Jr. right now. I mean, I'll take him over everybody but DeBonsa in the draft. I have the right to change my mind, Max. But after DeBonsa, I want Acuff Jr. Now, yes, I do know that his interest level on the defensive end is not what you would call very high. But offensively, Dame Lillard. This dude is going to get buckets and lots of them. I mean, there's a little bit of Derrick Rose, a little bit of Dame Lillard. Acuff Jr.'s got a super high floor, too. I don't know about these guys personally. That's the thing we don't know. I'm just talking about what I'm watching on the floor. To me, DeBonsa Acuff Jr., that's your top 2 right there, because I'm not taking Darren Peterson. No way. Sorry. He may turn out to be the transcendent player, but there are so many red flags, I don't know that I can risk it. And we saw him again in the game yesterday at times. And then we also saw what makes him great at times in the game yesterday. But Darius Acuff Jr. in the win over High Point, 36 points on 11 of 22, 3 of 6, 6 assists, two steals. This dude is a grown man as a freshman. What is his listed height, Max? Is he 6'3"? Because he's certainly built physically like a 6'2.5", 6'3", 6'4" guy. 6'3", 190, but he's put together. He is put together. And he's, 18 years old? 19 years old?
He's 19.
I seriously, DeBonsa, because there is a lot there that it's like this dude could end up blowing up and becoming Durant, whatever comp you want to use. But in terms of everybody else after that, I like Ament a little bit, but God, he's so skinny and he's so young. Acuff Jr. in a Wizards uniform. I understand Trae Young's going to be the point guard and the scoring point guard, but I could see the two playing together. And Trey Johnson, I mean, Acuff Jr. to me is a lock to be a big-time scorer at the NBA level. His desire to guard people is not very high at this point. So we'll see if that improves, because he's not a defensive stalwart by a long shot. All right, let's get to Sunday's games, yesterday's games when we come back. And it includes two incredible strategic situations at the end of the two buzzer-beating games, Iowa, Florida, and Kansas, St. John's. We'll do that next after these words from a few of our sponsors. Don't forget that you can jump on the phone lines with us right now at 301-230-0980 with your best moment, favorite moment you want to discuss from over the weekend, and all of our college hoops discussion during this tournament presented by Bud Light. Easy to drink, easy to enjoy. All right. Baseball's back this week. Opening night is live on Netflix this Wednesday night, March 25th. Aaron Judge and the New York Yankees clash with Rafael Devers and the San Francisco Giants. MLB opening night, Yankees Giants, live on Netflix, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Also want to remind all of you that Window Nation's offering between now and the end of the month, which has 8 days left, 50% off everything you buy. Any window you buy, any window style you purchase, you'll get 50% off. So you're going to pay half price on everything. And if you choose to finance the purchase. They've got an option that allows for you to pay nothing when you close the deal, no money down, and as little as $199 a month. If you've got older windows, you should replace them. You can save big on your energy bills, and your home will look nicer. If that's the case, all I ask is give Window Nation a chance. 866-90Nation, windownation.com. Have them come out to your home. They'll give you a free in-home estimate. It takes an hour or less. They'll schedule it for you when it's convenient for you. And then they'll leave you with the quote, and they won't bother you. They won't pressure you. You won't be obligated to anything. You can make the call. But it will include 50% off of everything. When they come to install the windows, if you decide to move forward with them, their installation crews, #1 according to Forbes magazine for window installation companies in America. They've got over 45,000 five-star reviews and a 96% customer satisfaction rating. Hurry. This sale ends the end of the month. 50% off everything. 866-90Nation, windownation.com. All right, let's go to yesterday's round 2 games, the Sunday games. I'll just start with let me just start with this. There used to be a time in which the tournament wouldn't have the schedules on Saturdays and Sundays that they now have, where you have one game, then a second game after the first game, and then a third game before the other 5 games start to happen. I mean, last night, Alabama, and Texas Tech ended, it was well after midnight on a Sunday night. I think you can start with that solo game, at noon or 1 o'clock on Saturday. But when you get to that second window, how about a second game there rather than just one standalone? You're at risk of having, blowout games and, losing people. The Purdue-Miami game was a good basketball game. Man, I'll tell you what, if you believe in guard play this time of year, Purdue's got the backcourt. They've got, 2 4-year starters in Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer. And Braden Smith didn't play that great yesterday, but that's the thing with those two, and I've watched them for 4 years. If one of them isn't great, the other one tends to pick up the other guy. Fletcher Lawyer yesterday, 24 points on 6 of 7 from the floor, 4 for 4 from behind the arc, and 8 for 8 from the free throw line. He was nearly perfect shooting the basketball. The problem with Braden Smith is he turned the ball over a bunch yesterday. He's still really good. By the way, I think he's got Steve Blake in him. Not just saying that because he's a white guy. And Blake was actually taller than Braden Smith and a little bit longer. But the style of play, I could see Braden Smith having a long NBA career, even if it is not spectacular. But Purdue's into the Sweet 16, and they're going to play Texas, who upset Gonzaga the day before. So let's get to the 2 cliffhangers. All right, we'll go with the first one first. That was a terribly ugly offensive basketball game, and Bill Self's a great coach. Don't get me wrong, and I'm not here to tell Bill Self what to do, but I think there are 2 things in that game that really bothered me. I had Kansas plus the 3.5. I'll take it. I don't know how I got there. They were down 14 with about 5 minutes to go. But St. John's presses full court. Pitino's pretty much done that his entire career, but they pressure the inbounds pass full court, and then they drop. And they'll drop to 3/4 court, then they'll drop to half, and they want you to burn up some shot clock if they don't turn you over on the inbounds pass. Man, just a little bit of advice from somebody who's done this a bunch, but is nowhere near expert at it. But especially at the youth level, work on your press break. I mean, especially if you're playing in a competitive league at a young age, press break, press break, press break. It's the advice I give every one of my friends that's coach young teams, because if you're in games in which the other team is super aggressive and maybe even more athletic and they're full court pressing and you don't know how to handle the pressure, the game gets sideways so quickly that it actually becomes not fun for the kids. And then it's like they don't love it as much. Press break. Kansas couldn't get the ball in bounds 5 times in the first half against just straight man-to-man pressure on the inbounds. I didn't see him run one play to get the ball inbounds. It was just, kind of Operation Get Open. And then when you got a team like that, you got to have a way to get the ball in bounds and then go score and get them out of it. Anyway, Kansas was a mess. They're not a good basketball team, and they haven't been, even though they were the 4 seed. They were a 4 seed as a 3.5-point underdog to the 5 seed. And Darren Peterson, of course, has been a story all year long. He came out and knocked down 2 threes to open up the game. And I'm like, all right, well, maybe we're going to see this dude strap this team to his back and take them to a Sweet 16. I'll tell you one thing I do like about Darren Peterson. He will guard you. He will absolutely guard defensively. He's got really good feet. He is very, very anticipatory. He sees it very much defensively. He's got steals in games all year long. He had 4 blocked shots in the game as an off-ball, defender. But he couldn't get the ball in bounds a couple of times. Just threw it away haphazardly. Kansas struggled all game, and then they make a run at the end, and Peterson had something to do with it. He took the game at the very end over, had a driving layup 3-point play, and then got fouled down 2 to tie it with the 2 free throws. So here was the strategy with Bill Self. It's the right strategy. Let me lay it out for you. So basically, they had 4 fouls to give in a tie game with, I just want to get the exact time. I think it was 13 seconds left when Peterson made the 2 free throws to tie it. Man, this ESPN play-by-play switch, if those of you that know what I'm talking about, it is the worst switch ever for a website. So he made the free throws with 13 seconds left. They have 4 fouls to give. What an advantage, right? You've got 2 team fouls. You've got 4 to give in a tie game. So obviously you're going to use up those fouls. They didn't use them the right way, in my opinion, okay, for whatever it's worth, because the first 2 they used within a second of the inbounds and then 2 seconds within the inbounds. They're coming up full court, so they're not going to shoot the ball from the backcourt. Let them burn 3-4 seconds on those first 2 and then foul, because I think they had an opportunity to, when they committed the 6th foul, which was the last foul to give, rather than there being just over 3 seconds left, I think there was a possibility for it to be like almost nothing left. And those 3 whatever seconds left, it was enough. And then defensively, they let a guy that had not scored in the game, was 0 for 4. First time it's ever happened in NCAA tournament history, where a player who has not scored a buzzer-beating game winner. And Dylan Darling had an absolute open road to the rim. I don't know what they were doing. First of all, you got to make the pass, go into the backcourt with them chasing it, not with them in motion. He caught it in motion moving forward. You gotta overplay, force the ball into the backcourt, and then you're going to get a heave rather than a layup, or worst case, a 28-foot contested jump shot. I didn't think Kansas did a good job at the end of that game after they got themselves back into it. And Darren Peterson, look, I read this story in The Athletic. It was well done. He had, he was hospitalized. He had a bad case of the flu. He had major stomach, full body cramps, and then had some stomach issues. This kid may blossom into a superstar, and there is an effortless way in which he scores, and he's also a good defender, and I like that about him. But in these games, like the games that mattered the most, let's look at him here for him, okay? Down the stretch, right? So in the Big 12 tournament, the first game against TCU, they won 78-73. He played 37 minutes, but he was 5 of 17 from the floor, 1 of 4 from the three-point line. He did score 24 points because he got to the line a lot. Had 3 steals in the game, too. He's a good defender. Then they got blown out by Houston. He was 3 for 11, had 14 points in the game. In the first round win over Cal Baptist, 37 minutes, 11 to 24, 4 for 11 from behind the arc, had 28 points, good game. And then yesterday, 5 of 15, 3 for 8 from behind the arc. A couple of them weren't even close. Got to the free throw line, 21 points. I think in a game like that against a team in St. John's that is good defensively, I'm not going to take that away from them. They're a good defensive basketball team, but you gotta get 30. You got to make sure your team gets by that game. What comes next? Duke? Okay, fine. I don't know. I just don't see it. I think there's parts of his game that I really love, but there's nothing that screams transcendent. So to me, it's DeBonsa or Acuff at the top of that draft if you've got the top two. So the other game, the number 1 seed, Florida, the defending champs being taken out. I mean, McCollum can just flat out coach. Did it at Northwest Missouri State, did it at Drake. This dude is truly great. You can tell sometimes with the little things, like the way they handle pressure, full court, half court pressure. Ball rarely hits the ground. They pass it so well. Their spacing so great. He's got to play for every inbound situation. The way he played it defensively at the end was brilliant. But I'll tell you, the player, and I do, of course, remember him from last year, but Thomas Houck is just unbelievably, he is so incredibly relentless as a player. And watching this game when Florida came back and took the lead, I think Dan Bonner was calling the game, and he said, I was in big trouble. They fell behind by 4. And I felt the same way in that moment because they were getting bullied by Houck and some of the guys. And their big guy, number 9, got in foul trouble in that game that hurt them. He was out for a big stretch. But really, really good game. But here's just the fascinating part of this game. So up, 72 to 70. Florida decides to press full court with 8.9 seconds left. So when I think under 5, under 4, you should always have somebody on the ball and force that pass into the backcourt. But with 8.9, if you press, man, you're taking a chance because they can throw it over the top of you. They didn't do that really in this case. And you can be at a disadvantage. You could be, 2 defensively against 3. But the reason he was, Todd Golden, pressuring full court is he wanted to foul up 2 with 8.9 seconds left. That's a new one, but apparently he's done it several times since arriving at Florida. I don't remember him doing it during the national championship run last year, but he wanted to foul the worst free throw shooter on the floor. If you're going to do that, Bennett Sturtz, who is their best free throw shooter, you've got to double him and not allow him to not only catch the inbounds pass off a really good designed inbounds play, but to catch it as he's moving down court with all the forward momentum. But he wanted to foul up 2. Now, think about that. You can't lose in regulation. I guess you could lose on an offensive rebound off a missed free throw, of course. Make the first one, miss the second one, offensive rebound, you lose that way. But more likely than not, especially with Florida, and they're a big team and a really good rebounding team, you can't lose on a 3 in regulation. You have the advantage, by the way, I looked this up. They had the definite foul advantage. 3 Iowa players, key players, had 4 fouls, including the guy that knocked down the three-pointer. I did not think, by the way, that was a flagrant on the punch. I'm not even sure it was a legitimate punch on the floor, if you know what I'm talking about, but I'll move on. But Golden, the Florida coach, wanted to foul and hopefully now they have very good free throw shooters, but the kid Banks had missed multiple free throws. He's a good free throw shooter, but he was 5 for 10 in the game. So fouling, a free throw shooter that is struggling up 2 with, say, 8 seconds, 7 seconds after the inbounds, I think there's probably, the math apparently, if you foul the lesser of their free throw shooters, favors playing that strategy. Of course, if that had happened, the announcers would have gone nuts and said, oh, my God, the one thing you can't do is foul up 2. You're not up 3, you're up 2. But Golden wanted to do that. And the point being is, okay, if they knock 2 down, we've got the ball with a chance to win in regulation. We get the last shot, and we can't lose on a dagger 3, which is what they lost on when they pressured, didn't foul, and were left in a defensive mismatch, 3 versus 2, and they left a corner shooter wide open for a 3 that they knocked down. I thought that was interesting. I don't think that I mean, I think I've heard it contemplated, but Golden's math, and analytics apparently suggests as long as the free throw shooter you're fouling, there's a decent chance he's not going to make both. It is a plus on versus not fouling and dealing with it defensively. All right. Any calls? We will do that next. Phone lines are open. 301-230-0980. What'd you make of the NCAA tournament over the weekend? All of our college hoops talk is presented by Bud Light. Easy to drink, easy to enjoy. 301-230-0980. Phone line's open to talk tournament. Anything that you want to discuss from over the weekend? Games, strategies, players you draft versus those that you wouldn't at the top of the draft in particular, new discoveries, whatever you got. I just discovered during the break that in our little pool that we have on ESPN.com, the Kevin Sheehan Show bracket challenge, which we did not really do a good job of promoting, but in first place, one Max Ames. His bracket is at the 99.8 percentile among all brackets in the country. Holy God.
Doing pretty good, huh, Kev?
You've got 14 of the final 16. I'm actually 39th in our pool, 66.8 percentile. My God, you have absolutely annihilated it. And you have, in your Sweet 16, you've got Duke over St. John's, Michigan State over UConn. You had Florida over Nebraska, so that's your one missing Sweet 16 team.
But I did say at the beginning when we were picking this that I thought Clemson could beat Florida. I was just wrong. On which team it would be. So shout out to Iowa.
Gonzaga and Florida are your two Sweet 16 teams that you don't have in. You have 14 of the Sweet 16, and you've got your final four intact. You have your Elite Eight intact too, don't you? No, Florida.
Yeah, I'm still reeling over it, but it'll be fine. I think Houston's still going to make it out of that region just fine.
Who do you have winning it? You got Michigan.
Yeah, Michigan winning it all.
Who do they beat in the final?
I think they beat Duke, but after that game against Siena, I was a little scared. We'll see how they do against St. John's coming up on what, Thursday? On Thursday.
Yeah, you know what this bracket does a poor job of doing? Am I missing this? It shows your championship pick, Michigan, in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
It shows your Final Four teams, but it does not show who you have beating in the final.
Yeah, it is blank in the middle, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, okay. It does say Duke over Houston in the Final Four section, just not in the championship section. I've got Purdue winning the whole thing. I actually feel kind of good about Purdue right now because they get a Texas team, and then Arizona. That game I didn't talk about from yesterday. Man, is that Utah State coach Calhoun? Is he good too? He's really good. I mean, they beat Villanova on Friday, and then they had that thing down to 3 late. I had them plus 11.5. They lost by 12. That happens. 14-8 though, not bad. That's what I care about the most. We will have more smell test picks when we get to Thursday's show for the Sweet 16 games, and of course, we have Sweet 16 games here on Friday at Capital One Arena. And those games feature, if you haven't seen the times, St. John's at Duke at 7:10, followed by Michigan State and UConn. Man, look at these Sweet 16 matchups. Texas, Purdue Thursday night, Iowa, Nebraska. I mean, the Big Ten's got 6 in the Sweet 16. And then Arkansas, Arizona. You talk about a heavyweight matchup. That may be the game I'm looking forward to watching the most. Arkansas and Arizona. And then Illinois, Houston. A lot of talk about, the heavyweights and the big conferences and whatever. Look, if you can raise the money, you can get players. There's still opportunities for that. High Point, I read something this morning. High Point saw an influx of 19,000 new applications off of their tournament win in the first round. And the near upset, not really upset, but they hung in there with Arkansas throughout. And then, God, St. John's, Duke, Bama, Michigan State, UConn. How about the ages of some of these coaches? Rick Barnes is coaching. Izzo, Pitino, Calipari. Wow, we got some old coaches. Kelvin Sampson. How old's Kelvin Sampson? He's got to be 65, right? 301-230-0980. Tracy, tournament talk. Go ahead.
Yes, best show on the station, by the way. Good job.
Thank you.
If I'm the Wizards, I wouldn't look any further than AJ or Boozer. I think the Wizards have about, 8 guards right now on the team?
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
Yeah, they
So,
got a lot of guards.
I think yes, I wouldn't even think about a guard. But if Boozer came in, he'll probably be the best big man on the team. What do you think about that? Think that would be a legit statement?
Well, I hope Anthony Davis is the best big guy in the team, and I hope Alex Sarr is second. I want to make sure I'm clear on Cam Boozer. What I love about him is I think he's got a very high floor. But when you have done what the Wizards have done, which is legitimately tank to accumulate as many picks and get in as many lotteries, you are looking for the future top 5 superstar. I don't know if that player exists in this draft or not, but Cam Boozer's probably not that player. He is a high floor player, a lower ceiling player, in my opinion. But he's going to be an NBA grinder for years to come and a contributor for sure. He's just not going to be a top 5 superstar. And if you're sitting there with number 1 or number 2 overall, you're hoping to land on the next top 5 elite player. And I don't believe that's Cam Boozer. DeBonsa would be the guy that I would take the swing at number 1. And I think Acuff Jr. is going to be a big-time NBA scorer in the backcourt. Like, there are some Lillard comparisons that make sense to me, even some Derrick Rose comparisons that make sense to me. His defense leaves a lot to be desired, no doubt. I get that. But anyway.
I got a two quick things. He reminds me of actually the kid on the team now, the guard coming from Atlanta off injury. Actually reminds me of Acuff.
Yeah,
yep,
he's not as wiry as Trae Young. The handle is really good. Trae Young's got a great handle. And Trae Young's got deep range. So that's a big comparison. Like people can say what they want about Trae Young. Comparing anybody to Trae Young's a 4 or 5 time, NBA All-Star, and has the ability, if he ever gets in the right situation, and maybe Anthony Davis is the right kind of teammate, to be, not a top 5 elite player, but definitely an all-star. But Acuff Jr., I think he's more, Derrick Rose sort of body type, maybe not as tall as Derrick Rose. Right. But what else you got? I want to get some other calls.
Last thing. Who does AJ remind you of? What former ACC player does AJ remind you of?
AJ DeBonsa?
Yep.
Gotta get this right. Give me a hint as to what you're thinking of.
Len Bias just doesn't have the wide shoulders. His explosiveness.
Leonard was cut from stone. He was chiseled from stone. DeBonsa's not that body type. DeBonsa's longer, taller, and probably a better creator off the dribble at this point. Yeah. I think, DeBonsa I've seen compared to, like, he plays like KD. I mean, I'm not saying he's going to be KD, but I think stylistically there's some KD in the way he plays, no doubt. And he's just not 7 feet.
Trae Young is a very underrated passer. He
can he's
16 times a night and 40.
Agreed. Thanks, Tracy. Appreciate it. Let's go to Anthony. Anthony, go ahead.
Kevin, tell me if you agree with this. Boozer is a poor man's Elton Brand.
Yeah. Anthony, I think I've mentioned this. I know I've mentioned it to friends of mine, but I'm pretty sure I've mentioned it on the show. This is not like the best, pure apples to apples, but in terms of the limitations at the pro level and how good of a college player he is. Now, he's only going to play 1 year, and Tyler Hansbrough played 4. But the way I see Tyler Hansbrough, that's what I see. Because Tyler Hansbrough could stretch the floor as a 3-point shooter. Cam Boozer can do the same. But they both had issues finishing at the rim in college. And that ended up being the case for Tyler Hansbrough at the NBA level. I'm not going to look. I think Cam Boozer's got a chance to have a better overall career than Hansbrough for sure. Hansbrough's career was 8-9 years. I don't even know at this point. I'm pulling it up.
Something like that.
But the thing I remember, like, Tyler Hansbrough is obviously one of the best college players really ever, ACC wise. I mean, he'd be on a top 10, top 12 list, right, of the greatest ACC players of all time. No doubt.
Yeah, he'd be up there.
But there was always something watching him in college. You were like, why can't you finish at the rim? And the reason was he didn't have long arms. Now, that's not the case with Boozer, but it's a bad comparison because Hansbrough came into the league as a grown man. He was 23 years old or whatever. I like Boozer. Elton Brand, I don't know, Brand seemed to be bigger than Boozer to me.
Well,
Was he bigger?
The reason I say Elton Brand is because both of them are kind of stiff, and Brand was a 1-2 dribble pull up or turnaround pull up, and I see the same thing in Boozer. That's why I compared them. They don't have fluidity in their game.
Yeah, Brand, by the way, was 6'9", 280. He was a bigger dude. But anyway, yeah, what else you got?
And as far as Peterson goes, I admit I haven't watched a lot of him during the year, but to me, he just seems like a jump shooter. I'm not saying he doesn't have a handle or whatever, but the games that I've watched, it's three-pointer, three-pointer, three-pointer. No driving to the basket, no mid-range.
He's got a mid-range, and he'll drive it to the rim. He shoots a lot of free throws.
Okay. Like I said, I haven't seen a lot of them, so just going by what I've seen. But for me, it's the Bonza. The Bonza his style is a combination of the Iceman and Durant melded together.
Well, I mean, remember when Durant came out, he got compared to Gervin.
I'm just saying style. I'm not saying anything else.
Yeah. No, I know what you're saying.
Style alone.
There's one big difference between Durant and DeBonsa, and by the way, Durant and one of my all-time favorite athletes in any sport, George the Iceman Gervin, is that Durant's like 7 feet. I mean, he's nearly 7 feet tall.
Yeah.
Gervin was 6'8",
6'7".
and DeBonsa's 6'9". Big difference. All right, man. Appreciate it.
The big difference between Durant and Ice, but one is difference. I don't consider that very big. So,
by the way, the other thing, as much as I love George Gervin, you know, he played during an era where the 3-point line was introduced during his career and then was never really emphasized during his career. I loved Ice and his ability as a scorer, because I consider him to be one of the greatest scorers in the history of the game, and the numbers certainly back that up. But he wasn't a great pure shooter, and Durant is. Can you picture Gervin being prolific from behind the arc like Durant has been, and with his shooting style? Maybe. I could be wrong. Well, but he was a scorer more than he was a shooter.
He was a product of his environment. Trust me. He could hit, in my opinion, he could hit shots. If the 3-pointer was as important back then as it is now, I have no worry about it.
Yeah.
No worry whatsoever.
I think you're right. By the way, one of the and I'm trying to think of the Spurs coach. It was the guy with the white hair. Whatever. One of the coaches that coached him at San Antonio once was asked about, what's he like to deal with, and how do you stop him? And he said, well, you can't stop Gervin. He said, if I say to him tonight, I need 70 from you, well, he'll go get 70. If I say to him, I only need 40 from you tonight, he'll go get 40. There was no number that he couldn't go get if that's what we needed. Stan Albeck is who I'm thinking of. And of course, famously, right, the David Thompson, George Gervin, Anthony, you remember this, final night of the season for the scoring title. Thompson earlier in the day, I think, went out and got 73. Ice needed something like 59 to retain the title. He had 56 at halftime and finished with 63 and took a seat. Yeah.
Could you imagine Gervin in today's NBA with the rules?
Oh my God! No hand checking. Forget about it. Yeah,
it would be a joke.
But he was so skinny. He'd get bumped around a lot, but he'd be living at the free throw line. All right, I got to run. Let me get another call in here. Jeff in Vienna. Jeff, tournament talk. Go ahead.
Happy Monday, Kevin.
Hey, you too,
Your
Jeff.
press break talk took me back to high school practice when if you inbounded the ball into the corner when working on the press break, all the balls got picked up and everybody ran for 15 minutes.
Well, look, if it depends on what kind of pressure you're facing. If you're facing, zone pressure and they're trapping, well, that you can invite the trap, but the ball's got to go immediately to the middle of the floor, off of that inbounds pass. But yes, that's not exactly the spot you want it in against full court pressure. That's for sure.
No, put the tallest guy in the middle of the floor, just outside.
Use your bigs, people, against pressure. Use your big guy as long as he can catch.
Don't take one dribble and pick up your dribble for God's sake.
Yeah, look at us. Yeah, we got all the answers. Just ask us. All right, what do you got?
Yeah, I got a rule change thought for you. Let me know what you think. Replay review under 2 minutes. Each team goes to the foul line opposite from where their bench is. They're not allowed to
can't huddle. Yes, totally with you.
If the coach wants to call a timeout,
he can use it.
He can call a timeout. When the buzzer sounds, back to the opposite foul line, no coaching, no subs, anything like that.
Well, I mean, yesterday in the Iowa-Florida game, they hit that three in the corner with whatever, 3.8, and it should have been 4.4. And Florida didn't have timeouts, and they gave them a timeout. How do you do that? Like if your clock operator misses the exact specific time they're supposed to stop the clock, which is once it clears the net, and they miss by 0.4 of a second, so be it. But you can't stop the game with that other team not having a timeout in that spot. And then, by the way, since they did have a timeout and they could huddle and they could design a play, I love that McCollum used his last timeout once he saw their alignment. He played it perfectly, by the way. Love that guy.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
But yes.
If you have a timeout, use it. But coaches are now coaching to replay, and they don't care about taking too many timeouts now.
Yeah. That should be a rule, though. That is I've heard the recommendation before. I know it's not the first time, but it's still a very good one. If you don't have, if they stop the clock for a replay, you shouldn't be able to huddle with your team unless you use your own timeout, period.
Yeah.
Thanks,
it
Jeff.
would speed everything up. Yeah. Have a good one, Kev.
Appreciate it. We got some phone lines open if you want to weigh in on the tournament, 301-230-0980. Anything from over the weekend, a player, a draft, argument that you want to have on which player the Wizards should hope to get, any of the strategy, real interesting strategies at the end of the Florida-Iowa games and the Kansas-St. John's games. And don't forget, this week, baseball is back. Opening night is live on Netflix this Wednesday, March 25th. Aaron Judge and the Yankees clash with Rafael Devers and the Giants. MLB opening night, New York Yankees, San Francisco Giants, live on Netflix, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Thank you for sending me this, James. So we talked earlier about Todd Golden wanting to foul up two. He's the head coach of Florida. They were a 1 seed. They were the defending champions. They were up 72-70. And with 8.9 seconds to go, they pressed Iowa full court, and they gave up basically an easy, wide open, no defense 3-point corner shot to fall behind 73-72. And he said that their strategy was to foul, and they didn't execute that strategy well. Well, James sent me this thing from last year. Some dude named Jack Settleman is the CEO and founder of Snapback Sports. I don't know what that is. But anyway, he tweeted out before the championship game last year. Remember the championship game that Florida won over Houston? He tweeted out on that championship day, he said, "You might see Todd Golden do something unconventional tonight in the championship game. For example, Florida might foul with a 2-point lead and 22 seconds remaining in the game. As told in The Athletic, it goes back to a 2019 Final Four meeting with Golden and Ken Pomeroy, Ken Pom, the godfather of college basketball analytics. Pomeroy had stopped pitching optimal end of game decisions to coaches because he found them too risk averse, but not Golden. In January of 2020, as the coach at San Francisco, Golden opted to foul BYU up 2 points with 22 seconds remaining. They targeted a 54% free throw shooter. So it doesn't say in this tweet whether or not it worked out. So, sorry, I couldn't finish that story. But James sent me this. This guy who writes about college basketball knew that Golden was interested in this kind of strategy, and that's what he said after the game. He said, "We wanted to foul up two." The announcers would have gone, "What are they doing?" But that was his plan. And what the plan essentially says is, if you foul a lower percentage free throw shooter, and just so you know, on the floor for Iowa at the time were not any low percentage free throw shooters, but there was one player on the floor, Tavion Banks, who was a good free throw shooter during the regular season, but he had missed multiple free throws down the stretch and was 5 of 10 in the game. So that would have been the guy likely that they would have been targeting, but they didn't foul, and they let the ball come into Bennett Sturtz, their best player. Sturtz, by the way, will be an NBA first-round pick, probably late first round. And they let him catch it with forward momentum against full court pressure, and they had a 3-on-2 and a wide open shooter in the corner. And the strategy is, if we foul, even if they make 2, we get the last shot, but we can't lose in regulation on giving up a 3. And if we foul a lesser free throw shooter, our percent chance, the analytics say, there's a plus something in terms of advantage, win probability. Interesting. I've often thought that. I don't know about you guys, but like if you're rooting for a team and they're down, you're up 2, it's like, oh my God, we could still lose this game on a 3. Maybe we should just foul. Like, I've thought about that before, but the odds are, that you're not going to lose on a 3, because most even really good 3-point shooting teams are like in the 40% range. And then you factor in clutch, factor in the time sensitivity to it, and it's probably even a lower percentage when it's rushed. So anyway, any thoughts on the tournament? 301-230-0980. Max has a 99.8% bracket. Where do you rank nationally with that bracket? Do you know?
Somewhere in the 50,000s, 53,714.
Oh my God, really? How many people are in the ESPN bracket?
Couple million.
Couple million.
Well,
actually, that would be easy to figure out. So you're 99.8. Oh, it's more than a couple million. So you are in the 50,000s, but 99.8 percentile. Wow. That's an unbelievable bracket. You can't win it though, right? You pretty much have to have had a 16 for 16 Sweet 16.
Pretty
at this
much,
point.
yeah. Because there are a couple still a little bit higher. I think there might be a perfect bracket, or there may have been a perfect bracket or two still out there towards the end of the weekend, but I think Florida's
Right.
loss kind of sealed all that up.
Andre in DC, go ahead.
Hey, Kevin, how you doing?
I'm good, Andre. How are you?
Yeah, it's an interesting fact. The USA 16 and under team had the Banza, Boozer brothers, Richardson, Acuff, and Avent on the same team. They used to beat people by 50 points, but to be honest, the biggest candidate is definitely the Banza. I think Acuff is still injured. I think he's been in a walking boot during the week, so he can't probably play defense like he can. But I think he might fit into the top 3 now, depending on the draft order at this point.
Wait, who would? Acuff, you think, too?
Yeah, I think Acuff is going to probably be in the top 3.
I think,
he's playing injured right now.
Yeah, I think Acuff Jr. would be, for me, if I have 3 and DeBonce and Peterson are gone, I'd go Acuff over Boozer, personally. I think I'd go Acuff over Peterson just because there's just too many question marks. Yeah, some of these high school teams, like Derek Queen, he played with Cooper Flagg, for crying out loud. I mean, ridiculous. Thanks, Andre. Appreciate it. Let's go to Chris in Bowie. Chris, go ahead.
What's going on, Shan? Good morning.
Hey, Chris, how are you?
I'm good. First of all, Duke is done. You didn't really mention that yet today, but Duke is done.
They're not winning this
when
thing.
they see St.
But they certainly, after watching St. John's, they certainly can beat St. John's. And then we might see a Duke, Michigan, round 2 at Capital One in the Elite 8.
We could, but that goes to my next point, is that you are absolutely correct about the top 3. DeBonsta versus Acuff, I think I would have Acuff. This is going to sound crazy, but I think I might take Acuff number 1, DeBonsta number 2, and then as many questions as he has, I think Darren Peterson is going to go third because, like you just said to the last guy, there's just too many red flags, too many questions that have to be answered, and we're talking about, drafting you in the top 3 of the NBA draft this coming up season. I mean, this upcoming off season.
Yeah.
And then thirdly, I'm trying to tell you, I know you watched this game. That St. John's, whoever they played, that game was incredible. Kansas. That game was incredible. I mean, Pitino, I'm a Maryland fan like you are, but to watch Pitino coach his team and those guys, I mean, that was an incredible game. The same thing with the other game that Calipari, the Arkansas game versus, what was that, High Point?
Yeah. High Point.
This season, March Madness is a bit different than what we usually see. Florida's still here. There's Houston still here.
Well,
but
Florida's gone. Florida got beat by Iowa.
I'm sorry. Yeah, Florida. Yeah, Florida. I'm sorry, my fault. Iowa got them out the way. But I think that this year, I've heard you say Purdue is your team. I'm telling you that this year, there's going to be a team that ends up in that Final Four that just might walk away with the chip that we're not expecting.
It's one and done. Anything can happen.
It's going to be like that.
Yeah. Back to Acuff.
You're correct.
Back to Acuff Jr. for a moment, for those that haven't seen him play. When you're a freshman and you have games, I want to list some of his games this year, okay? He broke the 30-point barrier for the first time on January 24th against LSU at 31 in an 85-81 win. He had 31 against Auburn in a win in early February. And then he went for 49 in a double overtime loss to Alabama on the road. 49. By the way, the shooting in that game, he was 16 of 27 from the floor, 6 of 10 from behind the arc, and 11 of 12 from the free throw line.
Yep.
Yeah. Then 37. Hey, we can let. Thanks for the call, Chris. Appreciate it. 37 in the quarterfinal win over Oklahoma in the Big 12 tournament, in the SEC tournament. Then he had 24 in the semis, in the semis, and then in the final when they beat Vanderbilt, he had 30. Then he went for 24 in round 1 against Hawaii and had 36 against High Point. This dude just is a scoring machine, and I'll tell you, watching him do it, he's so efficient. His first step, forget about it. He's physically, for his age, already, started to mature. He's a fun watch. And that may be the game for me. I mean, we'll do this on Thursday show, on Thursday's show. There's so many unbelievable matchups here in the Sweet 16. But that Arkansas team is such a big, long, huge grown man team, and so is Arizona. Arizona's an 8.5-point favorite. Wow. I didn't think it'd be that much. I bet you the world's going to be on Arkansas and Calipari in this game, especially after Arizona struggled down the stretch against Utah State. Let's go to Mark in Largo. Mark, go ahead.
I kind of look, Kevin. You and I feel it. Not having the local teams, and we feel it.
Yeah.
We feel it, and I think anybody who's of our age range, we not having the local teams, we feel it. That being said, I am pulling a lot for Michigan State. It would be real nice if Michigan could ever win a damn national title. They
have won a national title.
Yeah, but in 1989.
Yeah.
When I was 19 and you were 26. Okay, look. I mean, I think they have the best chance. I'm not buying.
First of all, why do you feel like Michigan needs to win a title? That's not a team that I would ever say, oh, it'd be really nice to see Michigan finally win a title. Really? They had the Fab Five. They were rock stars.
True, but look, 40 years ago was the first time Duke Blue Devils ever made it to a Final Four. They didn't make it in 87, but they made it in 88 and 89.
Lost to Never Nervous Purvis in the final.
Sure did. Wasn't that beautiful? That was just beautiful. Yeah. Just to see them lose. I was telling Max, the Duke Blue Devils are the most hated team in sports, period. There's nothing comes close to the Duke Blue Devils right now this time of the year. They're the most hated team in sports.
Well, and then when things happen like they did on Saturday, where you get just horrendous calls that go against the opponent. Yeah. And look, I've said this before. I've been a part of it on the other end of it. Kenny Denard, Buck Williams, Carlos Boozer, Lonnie Baxter, Steve Blake in the Gone in 50. I can go through the whole list. And I do think a lot of the Duke, officiating stuff gets out of control and is very, exaggerated at times. But that was pitiful on Saturday. And they lost by 23, so nobody's going to give it a second thought. But that game was 40-40, 44-44 in the second half. And you get a goaltending call that is just so badly missed. But, all right, what else you got? Other than you really want to see Michigan win a title. It'd be great to see them win a title. Let's play that game out, all right? Who would it be great to see win a title? You know who would be great to see win a title for me?
Who?
Houston and Kelvin Sampson. That'd be my number one. Matt Painter and Purdue number two. But they've been really, really good, and they've been really, really close. They've both been the last two, teams to lose in the title game.
Say that. What? I would even say Kelvin Sampson in general, but I think Houston, the school in general. Think about Houston.
I know.
I know.
Guy Lewis, he didn't win any of them.
1983 and 1984? You come into a one win to winning it? Yes.
Yeah.
I'm pulling for Houston to win the whole thing. It would be great. And you know what? Thank you, Kevin, for not jumping like the junkies did this morning about Jaden. I think Jaden getting out there and playing this weekend, I think he needed to get out there because he.
Why? Hold on for a second. Did you take my tongue-in-cheek open to the show as anything other than tongue-in-cheek? It sounds like you did. I was being sarcastic. I think him doing this weekend, people were literally choking on in Ashburn. Couldn't breathe when he was running pass receiving routes. I think it's one of the silliest things ever. It was
Kevin,
absolutely absurd, and it was a terrible reading of the room.
But Kevin, here's why I would say I think he.
So it sounds like I agree with the junkies. I didn't listen to them.
No.
Yeah.
No, but let me say this. Let me say this, Kevin. I think it's fair to say he did not want to be shut down going after the season. That's fair to say. I think he wanted to play. If it was up to him, he would have played it out.
He would have played out the end of the season. That was up to him. I think him playing, for him, it made him feel good.
Oh,
I think we have to understand these kids are built differently.
Here's what
than
should have
you
made
and
him feel good. Whatever the Saudis paid these people, that I can't say don't take that money. I can't say don't take that money, but I can also say that imagine what we would be talking about today, and for the next 10 years, had he actually like ripped in a knee or torn Achilles on one of those pass routes that he was running.
Except for last year. That's what people fail to realize. Outside of
those were in games. Those were in NFL games that he's required to play in based on his contract. It's not a celebrity charity flag football game. Let me be clear on this. Let me be very clear on this. The only reason to me that it's a thing for me, I can't speak for all of you, and clearly I would never attempt to speak for Mark and Largo, period. You really gotta enter a world that, is uncomfortable. But I said, and I will continue to say, that a year ago, off of that rookie season, I wouldn't have thought twice about it. When you miss 14 games and you get hurt every single time you've been on the field, and then you get shut down, and the first football is running around on a flag football field as a receiver trying to juke people. Look, the odds of anything happening were not high. I get that. And I get way back in the day, they used to play charity basketball games, NFL players did, but they also needed the money back then. And I don't want to deprive or talk about the money that was offered. I'm sure everybody would have taken that Saudi money to play in this game. I can only imagine what the number was. I wish we could find out what the number actually was. But for the organization, after you shut him down, after he barely played, and the first football is on a flag football field and he's running pass routes? Are you kidding me? That's silly. Anthony in Georgetown, go ahead.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for taking my phone call.
Yeah.
I'm just going to preface by saying that I'm a soccer person, so my basketball acumen obviously is not as high as yours. And college basketball. Love March Madness. It's the only time of the year I confess that I watch college basketball, and I watch just about as many games as are televised.
Right.
So I'm going to start by saying this: when I listen to your callers, you emphasize the importance of the 3-point shot being accurate. I respect that, obviously, but there's more to the game than just being a 3-point wizard or offensive rebounds. You've got to defend. And whether it's defending on the dribble 1 versus 1 or team defending or team rebounds, etc., the team that defends the best is going to win this tournament despite how great they are in their 3-point accuracy.
Okay. I don't have much, to retort with. I mean, defense rebounding is crucial. There are lots of different ways to win this tournament. I will tell you that historically, the teams that can't score or struggle to score but are excellent defensively don't win the tournament. They advance and they win games, but they don't win the tournament. That's been kind of a given over the years in this particular sport and in this particular 3-week period, that you've got to be able to score. And over the last 30 years, you got to be able to shoot the 3. You also have to be a good free throw shooting team. But I'm with you. There are many ways to skin the cat, as the saying goes. Like watching Florida, if they had gotten by that game last night against Iowa, I would have certainly given Florida a chance to win the national championship. Now, they're heavy on analytics, but what's interesting in watching them play is that they shoot a lot of 2s and they grab a lot of offensive rebounds and they protect the rim defensively. So, yeah, Houston's a team. Like, I love the way that Kelvin Sampson's teams defend. They're so much fun to watch. They're so tough. They're rugged teams. Michigan State's been that over the years. There are other examples of it. I'll tell you, Duke's very good defensively. St. John's is very good defensively right now. But historically, this tournament, if you are not a team, if you're a team that struggles to score but can really stop, you don't win the tournament. If you're a team that plays lower pace games or a slower pace game, but you're efficient offensively, you can win the tournament, even though you end up with lower scoring games. See UVA from 2019 as an example on that. Iowa is a very look up their pace of play stats, Max. I'm going to guess that they are really like towards the bottom in pace of play, but they're so efficient offensively. But the teams that have just been able to guard and be tough and rebound and rim protection and all that, but can't score 80 in a game, they typically don't win 6 in a row. It's just the way it's gone. Let's go to Anthony in Georgetown. Anthony, go ahead. Anthony, you there? Go to Alan. Alan, go ahead.
Yeah, hey, Kevin. A few thoughts on the tournament. I have in the final Arizona defeating Houston. I think Arizona has the most talent of any team, although I am concerned when I saw all those turnovers against Utah State in the second half. They're a little young, and I think they get a little complacent when they get a big lead.
Yeah.
But I still think they're going to go all the way. I do think Houston is the surest bet, though, to get to the Final Four because their next 2 games are at home.
Yeah,
So,
they're playing those 2 games at home. Excellent point. They're playing in
I think it's going to be almost impossible to beat them at Houston. And then my other thought is,
let me just say this: a Purdue-Houston Elite 8 game, I'd pay to see that one. And Illinois-Houston's going to be a fun game to watch too, for sure.
Yeah. And then the other team I'm wondering about, Iowa State. I have them getting to the Final Four. I think they can beat Tennessee without Jefferson. Michigan could be another story. And Alabama surprised me, frankly, especially with their point guard busted. But Michigan, especially Iowa State, I think if Jefferson's healthy, if he comes back, they can beat them. And then, in my opinion, this season, the best, even though the Big Ten has the most teams in the final, potentially, at least with the Sweet 16, I think the Big 12 gets at least 2, maybe 3 teams in the Final Four.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of anything can happen here. But good point on the injury for Iowa State. Jefferson was their second leading scorer during the year. We'll see what happens in that game. But also really good point that Houston's playing in Houston in the regional. So now if Purdue somehow got through that, the Final Four is in Indianapolis. Now the Final Four is definitely more of a corporate event than the regionals are. And certainly the first round. I mean, the Nebraska crowd in Oklahoma City was awesome to watch. All right, good calls. When we come back, I've got a what do you got about the biggest contract ever signed at a certain position in the NFL. It was announced this morning. We'll get to that, and then Ben Standig will join us at 12. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, and the Team980.com.
Hey, folks, Jason Horowitz here.
We have a new leader in average annual salary for the wide receiver category, Jackson Smith and Jigba. The NFL's Offensive Player of the Year wide receiver with the Seattle Seahawks reached a 4-year, $168.6 million contract extension, making him the highest paid wide receiver in NFL history at an average of $42.15 million per year. It also included $120 million of guaranteed money. So that tops the Jamar Chase deal from last year, where Chase got $161 million in aggregate, $112 guaranteed, and $40.25 million per year. And that had trumped the Justin Jefferson deal, which paid him $35 million. CeeDee Lamb's fourth and DK Metcalf is fifth, even though DK Metcalf's deal had a lot less in guaranteed money after he got traded to the Steelers. I'll tell you what, Jackson Smith and Jigba, he's a really good player. He's a really good player. If you told me, like, we're holding a draft right now, he is the third selection behind Chase and Jefferson. I don't even know if he's the third, Max. I don't even know if he's the third. But Chase and Jefferson are, true X's. And I think Njigba is what percentage of snaps does he play from the slot? By the way, I don't think that should matter that much, but I'm just curious. Where are you going to get that information? Does PFF have that information? He's got to play 50% of his snaps from the slot minimum inside. That's not Chase and Jefferson, clearly. But yeah. Really, really good player. They let Kenneth Walker III go. Shaheed stays and Jigba stays. The Super Bowl champs are going to be tough. I still think the best team in the league last year was the Rams at the end, and I think going into next year, are the Rams the favorite right now for 2026? They've got to be, right? They've got to be the favorites. Here are updated Super Bowl odds for next year. Yeah, the Rams are the favorites. They're 8-1, and then it's Buffalo, Baltimore, Seattle at 10-1. We've got over/under numbers up for the first time this year. I had not seen them. Had not seen the over/under numbers up yet. DraftKings put it out there. Washington's over/under number. Didn't we guess on this a few weeks ago? Max?
Did we?
I think that I guessed that they'd get some credit for being a team that might be quarterbacked by Jaden Daniels after his redshirt year. And I think I said it would be 8.5. They're 7.5. Now, playing the overs minus 130. So it's expensive to play the over on that. Yeah, they're at 7.5. Their win total for next year per DraftKings. But yeah, the Rams are the favorite, and Njigba just got the biggest contract in NFL history for a wide receiver. Ben Standing next.
Get it, Jaden Daniels. Looking for Devontae Adams. He's wide open. He's got it for the touchdown.
That was my favorite play of the game. I mean, eluded pressure, 3rd and 7. It was just a big-time throw. I mean, Jaden was 14 of 18 for 242, 3 touchdowns. But it was really the versatility of his wide receiving skills that I was most excited about. As I mentioned at the beginning of this show, I hope David Blau was paying attention. I mean, he juked some people as a receiver. Maybe we should do that, like on a couple of plays. Line them up, in shotgun or, and then sprint them out wide right and throw him a bubble screen. Let him get hit really hard after he jukes a few people. This is tongue-in-cheek, people. Those stats are not real. Ben Standig is with us. Nothing happened to Jaden Daniels. He apparently had a great time, apparently looked great. And all's well that ends well. But the perspective, if you shared it with me last week, that this better be worth a lot of money, and I bet it is. I bet they got paid an S-load of money from the Saudis because this was supposed to be in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. But some of the highlights that came through on my social media timeline, especially with Joe Burrow. I mean, 2 quarterbacks that have been actually literally hurt every time they seem to step on the field in recent years are out there trying to juke people in a flag football game. But all's well that ends well. Nobody got hurt. Ben Standig is with us. What did you think of this? I don't know that we talked about this. I can't believe we didn't talk about this because I talked about it here in the show. I talked about it on the podcast with Tommy. I was not a big fan of this. I didn't think it was the best reading of the room. If you had said he's playing in this game a year ago off his rookie year, I would have said, that's great. That'll be fun. But since he essentially got hurt every time he saw the field in basically, 4 games that he played in start to finish, I mean, what are we talking about? Why the minimal risk is 0 if he doesn't play. I don't know what your position was on this beforehand. I'm wondering what it was and what it is now.
Yeah, preach. About all I can say. I didn't really, obviously I was aware that this was happening, but I wasn't really positive what the role was going to be. Was he just going to be there as sort of an ambassador and kind of wave and sign autographs?
Right.
Or was he going to be more like a permanent quarterback? Just kind of, I honestly didn't even understand the rules necessarily, but okay. So yeah, I'm watching it and you're like, wait a minute, he's going out for passes. Wait a minute. They're like, I know there's no tackling, but you got human beings are moving at full speed. Wait a minute. The other team, for them, this is like their Super Bowl time.
Yeah.
50.
Right.
Like, and for these guys, the NFL guys, it's like, all right, you're right. They must have been getting paid a lot of money to go do this, including, Kyle Shanahan and all the anybody involved with this. To your point of reading the room, look, I'm glad nothing happened. Obviously, I'm real confident that people in Ashburn were holding their breath for a few hours,
of course,
just to make sure. And to the people who were like, "Oh, it's no big deal," I'm like, it's definitely potentially was a big deal. Like you said, the risk was not 0. And again, to your point, if last year this was the case after the rookie season, all right. I mean, but like to come off a year where you have all these injuries, where you miss all these games, I'm just glad that nothing did happen because it just does not seem to be worth the risk. Again, my bank account not involved, so it's easy for me to
Sure.
say that, I guess. But I was surprised, and I don't know what. I don't know what. Yeah, I don't know what the point was of doing this other than the money.
And bless them for taking advantage of these opportunities. Their careers are far too short, and many of them are not going to have the opportunity that Jaden's going to have to sign maybe a $500 million contract sometime next year. That's the point, though, is that your first football after missing 13 of 17 games, essentially, and being shut down to end the season for the final 4 games, is in an environment which you could have predicted would have gotten competitive because they're all competitive professional athletes and they're playing the Olympic team, which you knew that was an opportunity for them. So and then for that to be his first football, which is not advancing his football for his primary employer. Like, it's not like they're running David Blau's offense. It's not like he's advancing his football, acumen by doing this. It would have been, and I know it wasn't, and I knew going in, the chances are slim and none that anything bad's going to happen. But to your point, they were holding their breath. There's no doubt. They couldn't have been doing anything other, especially when they saw him out running pass routes. But it would have been, had he or anybody else gotten hurt, but especially him or Burrow, the two guys that have been injured a bunch, or Burrow's diving headfirst after catching a pass into the end zone. It would have been, for this city, had he been seriously, let's just say it's an Achilles and he's done for 2026, people would get fired over that. I don't even know if it wasn't within their control, but the view of him and the people around him would have changed overnight, and it would have been one of the all-time DMV, DC sports just bungles and disastrous events had something happened. But it didn't, and it wasn't really a high-level chance of it happening, so there you go. Go skiing. You know what? He should literally, let's take him skiing and hang gliding over the next few weeks and see if that'll help.
Yeah, I remember I was talking with a pretty established NFL player about off-season training, and he talked about playing pickup basketball was part of it. And I was like, are you allowed? They let you do that, kind of thing? And he's like, well, one, they can't, that they're not telling me I can't play basketball. And two, look, you can kind of get hurt doing, all kinds of things. And I think all that is true. And these guys do have to stay in shape so whether it's training with his private coaches or playing pickup basketball or whatever, every day we all walk outside our houses, things could happen. But to your point before, like, it's, at least if you're doing exercise or working out, it's for the context of improving you in some way for your actual job. This was not, nothing was happening here that was for the job. I don't care that he was technically playing quarterback. The fact that he was going out for pass passes, like, that's not, again, I get it. He's played football his whole life. He's been in his backyard. I get it. But, like, that's not the normal deal. And again, like, at least when you were playing, say, pickup basketball, well, maybe that's a bad example, but like if it was only NFL players in this game, they would all essentially be playing at the same speed, right? The reason why Sean Taylor clocking the punter years ago in the Pro Bowl stood out was because, like, what is going on here? Nobody is doing this in the Pro Bowl. Here you have these guys on this other team who are going as hard as they possibly can. Not only is it a once in a lifetime moment to play these NFL players, they want to show, no, we are the Olympic team, not these guys. So, it was just crazy. Again, glad nothing happened. No harm, no foul, ultimately. But man, fortunately, that was the case.
Yeah, and those that are pushing back, saying, stop yakking about this, sewing circle Nancy's. The guy's, having fun. He's a professional athlete. Nothing was ever going to happen. Yeah, again, missing the point. Would have been totally on board with any of this after his rookie year. But the first football for him, after basically missing the entire year for all intents and purposes and being shut down, is, on a 50-yard field with a bunch of highly competitive dudes, including the U.S. Olympic team, that wants to show that they're much better at this than the professional athletes. And for some God unknown reason, instead of just taking shotgun snaps and throwing the ball, he's out running pass routes. There was literally nothing of an upside involved in that whole thing for anybody outside of his circle, which, by the way, I would imagine the upside was a lot of money, and good for him.
By the way, just as a quick aside, I don't know if you remember, I'm sure you remember, but several years ago, there was this running back, Robert Edwards, with the Patriots, who was had a great rookie season, was looking like he can be one of the main best guys. For whatever reason, that year, like one of the Pro Bowl games or something, was like playing flag football on a beach, so in sand, and he's playing in this innocent game. He messes up his foot so badly, he didn't play for the next 4 years. Now, obviously, that's an extreme example, but that's the point of like, it is not there is some level of risk. You can't say there's none. So the people who are telling, saying old man cries at cloud. I mean, get out of here.
Again, it's like there's some context to this with him specifically. And by the way, with Joe Burrow too, if you're a Bengals fan, God, will we ever find out what they got paid to do this by the Saudis? Because there isn't, a limitless amount that they would pay for something like this, or there has been in other situations. And maybe if I knew that number, I would say, okay, I get it. Like, fine, whatever. All right.
By the way, it is also interesting, because obviously with the world we're way out of the world from back in the 1980s, but I always remember I think it was before they played the Dolphins in the Super Bowl with Theismann, and he's doing the pregame speech to the players, and he's like, we're going to go do this, or we're going to do that, and we're going to win $50,000 or whatever it was to
$70,000 in a big
and that was such a big deal because that was probably equal to or more than some of their salaries, and now it's sort of the point of the fame for these guys is so extraordinary that sure they make a ton of money playing sports, especially if you're a quarterback, but at the same time there's other money to be had out there, and it isn't just about your day job anymore.
No, I made the point earlier. It's a friend of mine had mentioned. Don't you remember the charity basketball games that the Redskins used to play? I'm like, of course I did. I actually was on the scores table as a 12-year-old helping with the scorebook at Whitman during a Redskins, and I forget who they played. I don't even know who they would have played in a charity basketball game. But those guys had full-time jobs in the off season. Like they weren't making this kind of money. This was a completely different time. Not exactly the same thing. All right, we can move on from this because you know what? He's fine, and we'll never have to mention it again. So Ben does a Substack column covering this team. You can find it, at Ben Standig, a link to it on X on Twitter. And you wrote today about the possibility that we get to the end of next month. We're a month? Is it a month from Thursday night, the draft? Something like that. I think
so, yeah.
And you talked about the various trade possibilities or trade paths up and back. You want to go through some of them with me and what you sort of explored in terms of, I tend to think that the trade back possibility is unrealistic this year because of the lack of quarterbacks, but that is a high level answer. And there's probably a lot of, minutia missing from it. So tell me what you think the possibilities of a trade back are.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's, we have been talking about this for some time now. I mean, we may be going all the way back to the actual Tunsil trade when you realize that they weren't going to have these picks, and then especially once the season started to fall apart. Yes, I'm with you that in generally speaking, this is not necessarily a great year for the trade back scenario. Not only are there probably not a second quarterback going in the top 10, but even the guys at the tippy top of this draft are not being viewed as like ultimate blue chip guys. I know people get confused because somebody's going to get picked second and somebody's going to get picked third, and therefore it's going to be equated to players in the past who've been picked in those spots. But not every draft is equal, and that's not to say that these guys aren't really fascinating prospects, but it is not considered to be the same locks that you've seen in other years with some of these top guys. There's good depth in this draft, but not necessarily at the top. That said, we all talk about this, and I think there's still at least worth looking at some of the potential scenarios. There are teams behind Washington that have a lot of picks, and sure, you can sit there and say, well, draft use every one of your picks. Like the Dolphins have 11 picks, right? They're kind of rebuilding. It looks like cool. Okay, but also 11 picks is a lot of picks, and it might make sense to consolidate some, especially if you can move up to get like a piece that you think you have going forward. And from Washington's perspective, I think it really, not only do you want extra picks, they only have 2 in the top 100, but the debate is, this is a draft that when you talk to people, who are really analyzing the whole board, some of them say there's only like maybe 10 or 11 players in this class that you would grade as a first-round talent. So if you drop down a bit, are you falling out of that range? And now all of a sudden, again, obviously you wouldn't get a good player, but at least on paper, now maybe you're not getting the blue chip guy or who qualifies as that in this class. And so that's why I think this is an interesting exercise, because again, it's something we've all talked about forever. So rather than just keep talking about it, I, kind of went through some of the scenarios to see, what is actually out there and what makes sense.
Right. So what would make sense? I don't want to give away your whole column, but give me one or two possibilities.
Well, sure. Okay, so I mentioned Miami. The Dolphins just traded away Jalen Waddle. They've traded away some of their other vet players. They've got a new coach and a new GM. So they now have 11 picks total, including 4 in the third round alone. Now, obviously, again, those picks can be really good for them. But, what if there's an opportunity for them to move up? If you look at the Jimmy Johnson trade chart, as it were, and each team has their own proprietary view of that. So, I'm just using the what's sort of publicly out there. A third round pick and a little bit more going up from is enough to go from like 11 to 7. And in the case that I had here, like I kind of think from just let's say Washington stays at 7. I think the Titans at 4 is the pick to watch for Washington, because it feels like they're either going to take a pass rusher or Jeremiah Love. That feels like the scenario right now, and whichever guy falls could possibly land to Washington at 7. So in this case, I had Bailey dropping.
Ooh. I wouldn't want to pass on him.
Well, and maybe you don't, but considering Washington what they've already done, I was like, all right, let's look at this. So so Miami moves up to take a pass rusher, because again they're sort of starting from scratch to a degree, and for Washington it ended up being Carnell Tate was a guy that was still available out there, but it could have been people get hung up on the actual pick sometimes when it's really this is about philosophical discussion. I could have put Carnell Tate at 7 and had somebody or at 6 and people get hung up on that. But the point is that like as long as if you include Mansour Delane, the cornerback from LSU, I think there's probably 8 or 9 guys that I think Washington could justifiably take in that space. And dropping back to 11, I think it would still work. The concern would be if there's no offensive lineman picked in the top 10, that could be a bit problematic. And then all of a sudden the trade down might not be as worth it. But to get an extra third, a little bit extra candy at the end of the draft, I think this is the type of thing. If we're all going to say, hey, they need more top 100 picks, well, this is what it takes. This is the cost. You have to drop down a little bit. You have to hope that there's somebody there that the other team is interested in. And and you have to hope the board kind of breaks your way from there.
Yeah. I mean, it's for me, I'm definitely a believer. I think you are too, in that this is, a 1-in-3 shot with most teams, and you don't know which of the 3 is going to be the one. And so volume is the best course of action, because if you're going to hit on 1 out of 3, and that's like a decent draft, and you don't know which one out of the 3, it's better to draft, 10 players and hit on 3 of them, a little bit more than 3 of them, than it is to draft, 3 players and hit on 1 in terms of overall number of contributors. But it's what you could be passing on. Like I always use this example, but when they traded, in the 2011 draft back and picked up some selections, and they were kind of proud of themselves, and Bruce Allen was proud of themselves, and they took a really good player in Ryan Kerrigan, but they passed on J.J. Watt, who was there. And that's what nobody knows. Nobody can predict that. But if you've got a player that you think is one of those 9-10 players on the board that are legitimate first round elite players, I don't think you can pass on that if he's there at 7, for the risk of not getting a player like that in a trade back.
Yeah, I mean, sure. I mean, I said in the story that the 2 players that if they fell, I would say Washington definitely stays were Sonny Styles and Jeremiah Love. I understand. And of course, we talked about the whole running back situation. It's not great value in the top 10, and you could make the same argument for off-ball linebacker. But just in terms of where Washington is right now, those are two players that would easily plug and play to what they need and would give a big boost. Whereas, yes, the defensive end would be big, but more for next year than it necessarily for this year. Again, we can talk about these things all the way we want, but also for the other team to want to trade up, it has to be a position that they would want to go for, and that's where Washington gets Owe, they get Sheehan. They can still. This is a deep draft for defensive ends. You could still get one in the third round. So like all those factors are like, okay, let's try this one. But yeah, I'm sure if you're sitting there and you're like, hey, David Bailey is awesome, we can't believe he's here, then you don't pass on that. I totally agree.
You also wrote, and for the rest of, by the way, the potential trade partners and the actual specifics of projected trade value for Washington if they were to trade back, go to Ben's Substack and subscribe. Because it's a really good read. But I thought one of the interesting things that you wrote about was just looking at the top 50 in this draft and breaking it down based on a consensus of a lot of draft people on where the draft is strongest in the top 50. And you can explain, but it's a good match in terms of the positions that are strong and Washington's needs.
Yeah, again, this is when we talked about this, maybe one of the last times I was on the show, and that people, we can look back at a team's rebuilding efforts and say, oh, they completely botched this thing. And I know I was bringing up the Wizards, but right now we're hearing some people are saying, oh, the Wizards have been tanking, they still don't have that guy. What are they doing? Well, you can't always predict who's going to be in the draft. You can't predict that that the year you want a certain prospect or players, it's not there. Like, look at the teams like the Jets and the Cardinals picking 2, 3, 8 need quarterbacks. There's nobody there. In 2024, picking 2 and 3 got you Jaden Daniels and Drake May. So in this case, what are the positions that they need the most? Okay, again, they address edge in the draft, in free agency, but you could always have more. That's a really, really deep group here. Wide receiver, another position we know they need. That's another one that's deep. Cornerback, linebacker, two positions that we've talked about justifiably. They could either add at a minimum some depth. Those positions are deep. If you want a running back or an interior offensive lineman, this is not a year for you in the top of the draft. So I do think the board breaks their way, and I think that's a good thing. But again, that also works to the idea of trading down. Now, the breakdown I was showing was top 50 because this just wasn't enough data out there for top 100s. But it's based on the top 50, and there's correlation to that. It doesn't just drop off the cliff at those spots. That if you trade down, you can still get need areas later. Whereas, and this is like, say, for example, with the draft, if you look at a team like the Cardinals picking 3 or the Browns picking 6. Offensive linemen are probably not going to be the highest rated players on teams' boards. I give you that. But the offensive tackle market drops off a cliff after sort of the end of the first round. And if you're picking at the top of the second round and still want one, you're probably not getting it. But the combination of a tackle at 3 and whatever else you need, a pass rusher at the top of the second, that may be better for you overall, even if you're taking sort of the lesser player perhaps at 3. Again, lesser is all relative. But so I think that's something you always have to consider with these drafts and something to look at when we say, well, what is Washington, what are their options? Their options are pretty good this year when it comes to the positions that they need the most.
All right. Lastly, before I let you run, you did get the details of the Chris Paul re-signing, and they were?
Oh man, my brain doesn't work. Was it one for $3 million? Was that what it was?
Hold on. You sent me the information. So
I mean, I think it was 3. It was under 5, which is the larger point. It was not a significant number relative to.
I'm going through your Twitter right now. I know you tweeted it.
Oh, well, I tweeted it. It'd be easier looking at your texts. Anyway, the point, I think it was 3, but either
right about that. Yeah, go ahead.
But anyway, the larger point is that, obviously this isn't
1 year, $3 million, 2.457 fully guaranteed. Okay. Wow.
So
I mean, not exactly a month ago conversation about what Chris Paul might get on the open market.
Yeah. And, look, and this is why we always, say, we can guess certain things, we can assume certain things, but especially when you start getting to more the middle of the pack type free agents, it's easier to say, the Trey Hendrickson or Jalen Phillips is going to get $25 million plus per year. They're the top of the heap. But when you're in the middle, whether it's a game of musical chairs or whether it's a game of, being overhyped to try to create a market, it wasn't there for him. And I mean, it's almost crazy that Washington just gave him that little, to be honest. I mean, like, again, I maybe that's what the market was all this time. I don't know. But basically, it was like, hey, if you want to come back, cool, but we're only giving you this. And he was like, all right. So, a bummer for him.
Well, I mean, it also speaks to something that you actually said, and I totally can feel that because of the potential difference in the scheme with, more athletic, nimble, offensive linemen where we might see more zone, more of a zone run scheme. And maybe all along, they're like, we're okay with Chris Paul leaving. It's actually going to be a better fit with Brandon Coleman. So, penciling Chris Paul into the starting position that he was in at the end of the season next to Laramie Tunsil, have a good eraser on that pencil.
Yeah, no, completely. I mean, look, obviously, I think he had a real good comfort here. He's like one of the many players who, likes what Dan Quinn has been building here and feels comfortable here.
Yeah.
I do almost wonder if there was an equal opportunity somewhere else to where you definitely would be the starter, if that might have been the better way to go for the next contract. But hey, look, he was the starting left guard last year. No reason to think he can't be it again. But yes, it's not a lock the way you might think if you're going to come back to the team you were just on.
All right. I will ask you this. Any tournament thoughts after the weekend? I'm sure you have plenty, but a lot of the conversation for people like you who love the NBA and love the Wizards, and I do too, is, what did you learn about, how you would sort of stack them up in terms of the top 3 or 4, if anything?
Yeah. I mean, from what had seen this year going into the tournament, I mean, Dabonsa, the forward from BYU, is the one I would want for the Wizards if they're going to be able to get that guy. I understand the Darren Peterson hype. There's obviously been a lot of questions about why he's not playing and whether it's injuries or what's going on. Look, I wasn't blown away, I'll just say, by watching him over these games. And sometimes it's tricky in college because the other team knows exactly
he's got to be 60.
What's that?
I don't know what that was, but continue.
Okay. But yeah, look, in college, the other team knows exactly who the best guy is. There's such a variance between the best guy and the next guy that it's just easier to say, just let everybody else do their thing. But I don't know. I wasn't blown away by Peterson. I didn't think that Boozer was particularly sharp either, but he's got more time to go. I really liked Acuff, the point guard from Arkansas. He's a bit small, but okay. I really like his game. But yeah, to me, it only further emphasizes it. If the Wizards get number 1, I'd go Dabonsa without even thinking too much about it.
Yeah, I think I'm with you, and I think Acuff Jr. would be number 2 for me. All right, thanks. Talk to you this week.
Yeah, man. See ya.
Ben Standing, everybody, at Ben Standing on X on Twitter. When we come back, Brenda Freeze is the Maryland head coach for their women's team. They lost in the round of 32 against former ACC rival North Carolina in Chapel Hill in the Dean Dome yesterday. But there was an exchange between her and one of her players that went viral yesterday. I will talk about it, explain it, and have thoughts on it when we come back. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. Good song, Max. Good job. Brenda Freeze has been the Maryland women's basketball coach for 24 seasons, just completed her 24th season. Her resume includes a national championship, 3 Final Fours, 4 Elite Eights, 5 Sweet 16s. Her team has not missed the NCAA tournament in 16 years. Brenda's won 631 games at Maryland, and her winning percentage is .780. She's a Hall of Fame coach. I think I can say that. I don't know the Hall of Fame criteria. I don't follow it super closely in that sport. The numbers I would have a hard time believing don't back up that she's a Hall of Fame coach. I mean, she's a winner, period. She won at Minnesota before coming to Maryland, and she won at Ball State before she was at Minnesota. I mean, she has been a head coach since 1999 and has one losing season, and that was her first season at Maryland. And her fourth season at Maryland, she was a national champion, beating Duke in the final of the NCAA tournament. So yesterday, the Terps were actually one of the lower seeded kind of teams they've had in a while. They were 24-8 heading into their second round matchup in the NCAA tournament, a game in the Dean Dome in Chapel Hill against the 4-seeded North Carolina Tar Heels. The Terps were 5th seeded. And there was an exchange between Brenda Freeze and her star junior forward, Oluke Okinanwa, who averaged 17.8 points per game. And there was an exchange caught because the game was televised nationally on ESPN. And there was an exchange caught where Brenda is in her player's face. And if you aren't reading lips and you're not sure what's going on, it looks like one of those, coaches who have kind of lost it for a moment and is going off on a player. Well, that's not what it was. You could read her lips. You could understand that she was encouraging her, but saying, "This is your moment." She apparently had not been playing well up until that point. She slapped her on the side, and the player walked off towards the bench. This was the player talking about her coach, Brenda Freeze, in that exchange after the game.
Coach understands I'm a competitor at heart, and I've told her this before, and I'll keep on telling her this until forever. I love to be coached hard, and that's what she does with me every single day. And really what that was a regroup moment for myself and her telling me she believed in me, because sometimes that's really all you need to hear to get back out there. It's a long game, lots of ups and downs, and I feel like after that conversation, that's when I really went back out and just did what I had to do for my team in that moment. So I'm forever appreciative of that.
Great answer. And, a special moment. But I've just got to say this because I'm saying it from the perspective of not knowing for sure. But when I saw this go viral and I could read her lips and I could see that a lot of this was the encouragement. John Wooden, if you've ever followed the whole John Wooden or read any of the John Wooden books, and there are many of them, said essentially for a player to hear constructive criticism, the player has to hear at least 3, if not 4 words of encouragement. But the other thing that was, and it was clear that there was encouragement, there was building up, and it wasn't faux building up. It wasn't fake. It's not the, "Hey, Junior, you're really good," even though Junior just can't dribble, can't pass, can't shoot, can't do anything, and you're trying to build up confidence. Even young people understand the difference between real, honest confidence building and that of just a loving parent that wants the player to believe that they can do it. And the one thing that I thought about, because Brenda's obviously done something exceptionally well. Is it the X's and O's? Is it the recruiting? But this isn't the first time you've seen her in exchanges with players on the sideline. I think her secret is EQ, this ability to connect with her players. Her players have loved her over the years. There's the ability to have, and I read her tweet. She said that something to the effect that I can't do that with a player without first having a relationship with that player and understanding that player. Her sister tweeted, Brenda Freeze tweeted this video and said, my sister's superpower, knowing what a player needs and when they need it. Credit to Aluki, the player, to be receptive to coaching in this moment. Such an elite mindset. I don't even think it's the hard coaching, because there's hard coaching here, but there's also incredible sort of relationship. There's a relationship there that allows her to be interface. By the way, never losing eye contact. Never losing eye contact. Being a great communicator and motivator requires also the facial part of it and the tone part of it. And she's looking straight at her. And in that constructive criticism is multiple moments of legitimate encouragement where the player walks away thinking she believes in me rather than I just messed up. That is a gift and a talent for a coach. And she clearly has that, man. Overall, you don't coach as many years and have as much success as she's had just being a great recruiter, or just being a great X's and O's coach, or just being a great in-game strategist. There's a whole emotional quotient part of this that she clearly has and has had for a long time with her players. Too bad the Terps lost. I was certainly rooting for them. I actually flipped it on. I didn't see this video until after the game, but the Purdue game was starting to get a little bit away, and I flipped it over because they were an early game. They played at 12, and it was on ESPN, and they were down 8 at halftime, and they came back, or 9 at halftime. They came back and tied it at the end of the third quarter. Anytime I can get any Terps team against a former ACC rival, there is a little bit of, enhanced juice to it. But man, in our area, we've had some great coaches, and we have some great coaches. And I'm sure being the women's basketball coach at the University of Maryland isn't the easiest. That's not what the school is known for, even though the greatest success and the most consistent success has been men's lacrosse, women's lacrosse, I think women's field hockey, and then women's basketball. But the juice and the revenue and everything comes from obviously football, men's football and men's basketball. But good God, 24 seasons coming up on 2.5 decades. She's won 631 games at Maryland and only lost 178. Every single season, like she's finishing, pretty much in the top 2 or 3 of every league she's been in. Now, the ACC, there were some years in which she was in the NCAA tournament, but may have finished 3rd or 4th. And this year in the Big Ten, by the way, was her worst finish in the Big Ten since Maryland entered the Big Ten. She finished tied for 6th, but got a berth. I mean, they won 22 games in the regular season. Anyway, love that video. I tweeted it out yesterday. If you haven't seen it, just, Google Brenda Freeze encounter with her player. I think that was, by the way, not that she did it for this reason at all. That would be super skeptical, and that's not where I'm going with this. But that's one of those moments when it goes viral. Certainly doesn't hurt recruiting. That's for sure. Too bad the Terps came up a little bit short, but they were an underdog. They were the lower seeded team. She's had an unbelievable run. All right. I said something earlier about Iowa, about their pace of play. I have the numbers, and the look-ahead lines to Thursday and Friday night Sweet 16 games offer up some pretty amazing and I think surprising point spreads. We'll get to that when we come back. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. From Brad, just so you know, Kevin, Chris Weller's in the Hall of Fame, and she won 200 fewer. She won 200 fewer games than what Brenda has won already, and did not win a national championship. Brenda Freeze is an absolute lock Hall of Famer in the Women's College Basketball Hall of Fame. Somebody else said she's also in the DC Basketball Hall of Fame. First woman voted to that. I do remember that from just a few years ago. Thank you for that. We talked earlier in the show about Iowa's pace of play, and I said they've got to be, way back there, way down the list. How about 365th among 365 teams, dead last in the NCAA in pace of play at 64.6 possessions per game. Wow. Let's see if anybody else is in the Sweet 16 that has that level of pace of play. I'm going up the list to find the next Sweets. Oh, Purdue's at 338. So there you go. Big Ten's been a grinded out league for a while now. I mean, Illinois plays fast. Michigan State plays fast. Iowa used to play fast with Fran McCaffrey, who Coach's pen got him into the tournament, but never got Iowa, even as a very high seed on multiple occasions, into the second weekend. Yesterday was Iowa's first Sweet 16 trip since '99. That surprised me for sure. Looking ahead, by the way, to Thursday, there's some interesting lines. Houston playing in Houston against Illinois is just a 3-point favorite. I think I'm going to have Illinois in that one. And Arizona is an 8-point favorite over Acuff Jr. and the Razorbacks. That seems high to me. Might be that the dogs start barking, Max, in the Sweet 16. On Friday, Duke is a 6.5-point favorite over St. John's, and Michigan is 10 over Bama, who put up 90 on Texas Tech last night. UConn's favored over Michigan State, and Iowa State's a 4-point favorite over Rick Barnes and Ament, and the Jacoby Gillespie was outstanding for Tennessee. We didn't mention that when we went through our tournament recap. Last year's Maryland starting point guard, who was instrumental in the Terps getting to the Sweet 16, has been great for Tennessee and Rick Barnes this year. He was phenomenal over the weekend. I think he averaged 25 in the 2 wins. And they knocked out Virginia, who was right there at the end. I mean, they had nice little comeback, got them back to within striking distance. They actually had the lead late, but they ended up losing that game. These are great Sweet 16 games. But the lines that surprise me, Michigan's favored by an awful lot over Alabama, double digits. That's surprising to me. And Houston being a short favorite over Illinois at 3, and Arizona being a solid 8-point favorite against that Arkansas team that we watched over the first 2 rounds. That seems high. I think you're going to see the favorites have done very well in this tournament so far. Chalk has done very well. Favorites to win outright, they've done well against the number. But maybe we start to see the dogs really bounce back in the Sweet 16. Yeah. All right. Thanks to Ben, who joined us on the show. Thanks to all of you who called today on the show. Chris Russell is coming up next.